Good evening. Sanibonani. Ninjani. Siyajabula kunipona. My name is Steve. I have the privilege of working for the Center for Creative Arts. We are responsible for putting these events together and some other events throughout the year. Look out for the work that we do throughout the year, like Durban International Film Festival and Jamba and Poetry Africa later in the year. This week has been really great week. We've had a lot of events going on around the city. I don't know if everyone's aware of our extensive program, but the writers that have been in the program this week, we've taken all around the city, as far afield as Gratful, Komashu, Umlazi, Chatsworth, Mampton-Toti, Westville, locally in the city centre. We do events at DUT, UKZN campuses, and all over the place throughout the day, as well as a lot of schools and schools visits and that, which is always very enlightening, and it's really great to see the students and the young learners, at least, getting really excited about the writers and getting a good insight into, potential careers in the arts and that in the future. So, there's a message for everybody. Please turn off your phones onto silent. I will start. I'll lead by example. Thank you very much. Basically, the week has been really great, and the discussions here have been really enlightening. And if you've been here before, thanks for coming throughout the week. We'd like to just thank everybody, starting with the staff at the EST and Steph and Tina, the technical crew, and everybody else who's been involved with the theatre. Thanks for hosting us here. For so many years, this theatre has been part of our centre's history with the film festival and all of these events starting out here and been running here for many years. This obviously being our 17th year. And obviously the Center for Creative Arts falls within UKZN, within the College of Humanities, and we are a special project of the DVC Professor Cheryl Prakita, and thanks goes out to her, as well as Kishore Gobadan, the Director of Professional Services at the College of Humanities. They've helped us out a lot and kept the center going over the last 2 years, and hopefully there'll be good things to come from us in the future. As well as a thanks to our team at the Center for Creative Arts. We've got a few new interns, and they sort of started last week, and they've been thrown right into this whole craziness of running a festival. And so thanks go out to the interns, the guys up in the booth and at the back there. Everyone's been working really hard and trying to get everyone around to their events. So to my team, thanks everybody. It's been a really cool festival, and I look forward to the rest of the year with you guys. So basically, we will move into the first session of the evening, which is entitled New African Women Writers Rising, and features Hawa, Jande, Golakai from Liberia, as well as Chibundu, Onuzo from Nigeria, and it's facilitated by Sandile and Ngidi. So please welcome them to the stage and send us some tweets, and let's get the conversation going. Thank you.
Open quotes. So long as the mind keeps silent in the motionless world of its hopes, everything is reflected and arranged in the university, in the unit of sets nostalgia, and it sells nostalgia. But with its first move, this world cracks and tumbles. An infinite number of shimmering fragments is offered to the understanding. We must despair of ever constructing the familiar, calm surface, which would give us hope, which would give us peace of heart. Albert Camus, The Myth of Sisyphus. Abige, what does your father do? Many things. Like what? Shipping, construction, insurance, electronics. Olumide Johnson does everything. Why? I was just wondering what it took to build a house like yours. Very funny. We were in the pool, but we went swimming. What he loved were the simulated waves drifting him wherever they pleased. Sometimes our bodies would bump against each other. While we were floating, one of my half-brothers walked in with a towel draped around his neck. Once he saw me, he turned and left. Who was that? Chibundu Onuzo, the Spider King's daughter. Chibundu is on my far left. Five minutes later, Chloe found herself on the floor, divested of everything except the skirt. She averted her eyes in horror from his erect penis. Glad its latex sheath gave her one less thing to worry about. No one had warned girls like her effectively enough about this brand of sexual encounter, and she was grateful for it. Prior knowledge would have made soldiering through impossible. Her feelings about them had been cemented early on in life and weren't likely to ever change. He actually held her panties up to his nose and breathed of them with deep reverence before entering her. Chloe gave a shudder of repulsion and tried not to clench up, hastily covering up her distaste with a soft moan. She would keep her eyes closed the whole way through. That would help. The Lazarus Effect by H.J. Golakai on my left, immediate left here. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be here. I've been given a task of facilitating this discussion tonight, and I'm honored indeed to be surrounded by these young titans of African literature, young voices in a world where African literature continues to be under guard in a sense, or under scrutiny from different quarters for a number of reasons. I guess this is one of the reasons the organizers decided that our theme tonight will be New African women writers rising. I wouldn't like to go too much into the plots of the novels, but I think it is only fair to the audience and the writers that one demonstrates a certain appreciation of the text that the two writers have deftly presented to the readers throughout the world. The Spider King's Daughter, and it's an elegant and racy prose, work of prose that, in a sense, goes back to this theme of the soul of our continent, the theme of a failed African state, in this instance, Nigeria, but this is an epitome of what is happening in other parts of the continent as well. Through some wonderful, elegant, and disarming, almost innocent voice, the author gives us a multi-layered interpretation of the state we're in, and in a sense begins to go back to the question Chinua Achebe once asked: when did the rain begin to beat us? My sister here on the immediate left, Hawa Golakai, has written this pacey novel based in a Cape Town of so much underground or the Cape Town of which was like the Bailey of the beast, so to speak. A Cape Town that is not a Cape of Good Hope. A Cape Town or a Cape of storms, of different textures. The main character, of course, is a journalist who is out to do some powerful investigative work. There's a girl that is missing. The girl is born out of wedlock. An emigre has returned with a wonderful sense of optimism about the new South Africa, and so on and so on. But when he comes back, the ghosts of his past, in a sense, catch up with him, and so unravels a beautiful crime thriller, in a sense. But again, also the author is Liberian. She also in this multi-layered text brings us the ghosts of her homeland that continue to haunt this main character as she goes about on this mission to uncover the mystery behind this missing young girl. Of course, I would leave it there and then get to the writers directly. The theme tonight is New African Women Writers. New African Women Writers Rising. Let's get a sense from you. What is rising about the writers emerging out of Africa today? In other words, what is it that needs to be celebrated, particularly women writers, as my handlers have suggested?
We've been on the beach for a long time today.
Yeah, we are a bit disoriented by all this grandiousness of.
So, Hawa, what is it about you that is rising?
Okay, of course, there are figures like Chimamanda, who is possibly at the pinnacle of the sense that we're possibly approaching a golden age of women African writers. What is your sense of that position and that positioning?
Well, I'm against this whole, every time people talk about us, they need to put us in a lane. And whenever they put us in a lane, if you are to move into the fast lane, you must hear about Chimamanda. No hateration. No, seriously. No, I don't, have any what the Americans call hateration for a fellow sister. But I was saying today at one of my events that there seems to be this disturbing trend to continuously put us, and we always talk about labels, we always talk about boxes, people tired of hearing about those things. But the truth of the matter is, there's a trend now that whenever something comes out of Africa, we must package it really quickly. It's almost like to say that we can't leave it to let it breathe. We can't leave it to let it rise. Like we are not used to be rising.
But
no, the point I'm trying to make is, why must we be African black women rising? So I'm just saying that we want to write. And I think if we are to pick something that we are rising about, as a body, writers on this continent, we bring about a resurgence, we bring about a renaissance. The style of our writing has changed a lot since, Achebe, since Soyinka. These people paved the way for something great for us. And there were just one of them dotted around, and they had to leave the continent to go somewhere to get that kind of, to get the accolades that they have today. So we say, as a lot of us here that we don't necessarily want to emigrate to go somewhere else so that we can come home and be celebrities in our homelands. We know the issues here. So we will talk about the issues here while we are here. And we want to say that we can make something of this genre of literature, however broad it is, however colorful, wherever you're from. We can talk about our issues cross-culturally. And we can say that, listen, we here, we can talk about these things without having to say that this is the particular box that we fit in. That for me that's the only rising, it's an uprising. But other than that, I don't really feel that we...
Possibly there's a suggestion that you are the new sun rising, out of darkest, Africa.
Yes, you see, and it's such, such quaint images that, that cause great discomfort. And I think it puts hurdles that we don't need extra hurdles as Africans to jump over. We know we are fast. We've seen the Kenyans run. We know we are quick. We are quick. We know this. But we don't now have to, have people to now make our efforts into Olympian feats by saying, now define yourself in the exact terms of what you are. We write stories like everybody else. We write stories.
Yeah. I think what's interesting and what's really fantastic about this panel is that I'm a Nigerian writer writing in England, and Hawa is a Liberian writer, but writing from Liberia. And I think there is beginning to be more of it's not where it should be, but there's beginning to be, I think for me that's what's rising, more of a level playing field, that you don't necessarily have to emigrate to then, to have a publishing career, to have a writing career. You can write from where you're standing in the world, and that's a valid perspective. So I think, this is important.
There's a notion, Mudimbe articulates it very well, that the idea of Africa in the West is deviation. And as you are emerging writers from Africa, there's a certain sense that actually your appeal is the thrill of the exotic, the deviation from the norm. And I would imagine as you are beginning to express yourselves, these are some of the challenges, as it were, that as artists, as writers, you have to contend with.
Obviously, the world is round, so the West only depends where you're standing.
Is it round?
Well, it depends where is the West? Okay. My geography isn't very good, but I'm in South Africa now, so north, east, west is this way. West is.
But it's round.
So London is actually the north, if I'm correct at the moment. So I don't know. I just feel. I'll tell you my own personal experience. I can't speak for more. I don't know everyone's story. But so with The Spider King's Daughter, when I got an agent, she told me that what publishers like is that, yes, they do like the exotic part of, Africa or whatever. So I should put in more description scenes because they want enough descriptions. So I just kind of went around. I painted the town red with descriptions. I began to describe the sunset. She was like, they want to feel, she actually said, they want to feel the dust in the back of their throats. I began to describe the dust, and, I began to describe the lizards running through urban Lagos. And then, thankfully, or luckily for me, I got a really fantastic editor who didn't know anything about this when she bought the book. And then, she'd go through the book and she'd be like, this sunset, I don't get, it doesn't really fit in with everything else. And it was funny, literally, she was such a perceptive and acute reader. It doesn't have anything to do with being, African or whatever. People, if you recognize good and bad writing, you recognize it. And she'd be like, this sunset, I don't understand. We're talking about the downfall, and then the sun. The sun sinks into the Atlantic Ocean, and the canoemen are paddling away to, wherever. That was my personal experience. And I feel like, sometimes because you do want to get published. You feel you have to do certain things. But I mean, hopefully you have a secondary reader who can pull you up and be like, nah, mate, that just doesn't work.
For me, I think writing this book, after having lived in Cape Town for several years, and this book, you know, it bubbled up, and I always tell people I fermented this, you know, it came out of me. Had a very hectic job, but I still managed to find the time, you know, in between all my lab experiments, anything I was doing, skipping lunch, working late hours. Sunday is my, you know, it's sacrilege for me to do anything on Sunday besides, you know, stand in my kitchen like Nigella Lawson and make, you know, 10 different dishes, you know, eat all 10, freeze the rest, and, you know, but Sunday I was working, you know, Sunday till 2, 3 a.m. I was working on this book. And writing this book came from what I noticed around my travels in Africa, because I bounced around a lot like a bouncing ball. People always say, who are you, you know? And Suki always answer, I belong to Africa, I'm a child of this continent. This continent birthed me, it raised me, and it will continue to do so. But I found it indefensible the longer I stayed here after all my travels, that this exoticness that you talk about is actually pervasive within us as a people on this continent, that we are exotic to each other. People would say to me, so you are from Libya, you are from Siberia. Where? And I'm like, go look on the map of Africa on the west coast. So you speak Swahili like the Kenyans. The Kenyans on the east coast. So things like that made me think we don't really know each other. We don't know each other at all. And there doesn't seem to be, it seems like we have this grand shrug as to, you know, who we are towards each other. Yet we complain when we see the West portray us with the flies and the child that's begging, and, you know, we're very quick to say, you know, we've got roads, we've got airports, I am not that black person. But we don't see that within our population, the majority of our people, unfortunately, they are that black person. We just think the problems from another country is those people's problems. So this protagonist for me was saying to South Africa at large, this Liberian girl is just like you. She's here, she's had a rough past, but her life, I think any woman can read this story and say, oh, I remember something like this in my life, or in my sister's life, in my mother's life, or my auntie's life. Yeah. That I went through something like this, and, you know, it's the backdrop in Cape Town. It portrays so many strata in Cape Town of the family that's wealthy, but they got problems. You know, the kid from Athlone with his gangster past. So it goes through all the strata, and it shows that, you know, that this interconnection that tells people that, you know, as cliche as it sounds, we connected as people, our similarities a whole lot more than our differences.
And the beauty in that, and the beauty in the way you portray. Yeah, I mean, action is character. Character is action. I love the paciness of the work of the novel, but also the fact that in as much as you are in Cape Town, you are giving us, in a sense, a fresh perspective, you know, on Cape Town from a Liberian's, perspective, in that sense. An outsider looking in. What made you, for instance, decide to weave these narratives, the political tragedy of Liberia and the unfolding tragedy of the new South Africa, so to speak?
I don't really, it wasn't so much a decision as the way the story came together. The story was very, in a sense, it was character-driven. V had her personality, she had her backdrop. But when I first thought of V, I was, much younger. I was about 19, 20 when the character of V came into my mind. And she stuck with me, several years down the line. She didn't have a story until Cape Town. And I thought this is the time to, where I needed a story for her. And I was moved by something I read in the news of, a family that were on the Cape Flats. Their child went missing. And this is now where I came in to hear about the story. Several months had passed, and the police were kind of like on TV with that desperate, awkward look of, we can't find this child. Yeah. And it was now the parents crying on the TV and saying, so now what will happen? Yeah. And I just wondered, like, when somebody goes missing like that, especially in African culture, when you can't bury somebody, there's this feeling of, it's not, like, loss has a finality to it. But there's this feeling of something keeps up welling, but it never has a resolution. Yeah. And it has that parallel with V, that she went through this war situation, horrible things she witnessed. But, as a strong black woman, she never sat down, she never grieved, she never admitted to a lot of things. And now she's now slammed into a wall in her life and things starting to eat at her. So I put that mysticism in and connected all the characters through her with this unresolved issue that now starting to plague her in the form of something that she can't actually go up and talk to people about because people would tell her, look, I think you need some medical attention.
Yeah, thank you. You, both of you are children of the post-colonial situation.
Me, I'm from Liberia. We're never colonized.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Very interesting.
Liberia, we were free all the time.
I love that. I love that. But in a sense, that's beautiful. In a sense, in a bigger scheme of things, Africa. For instance, in the introduction to the festival, there's a sense that Binyavanga is arguing that, for instance, he is looking forward to writers who are imagining Africa without necessarily linking it to the colonial condition. Moving on. And I would imagine, in a certain sense, you are some of the writers, your generation of writers, are writing to present themselves as anything a best writer can be from wherever. There isn't this sense of burden of history, to use Mpahlelo's words, that you have to go back. What happened, who made this, what went wrong with, and so on. But I would imagine, in a sense, you continue to go back to the issues that are linked to the colonial condition, because post-coloniality, of course, doesn't suggest that we are post, really, in a real sense. It's a transitional phase. And your story, for instance, the Spider King's daughter, touches on that theme pretty well.
I don't know. So Nigeria has turned 100 this year, and I know there are lots of. Nigeria was amalgamated. The North and South were amalgamated by the British, and a lot of people say, that was a wrong decision or that was a right decision. But on one hand, I see, okay, there were seeds of destruction sown, in the way we were colonized, et cetera, et cetera. But, when I just hear people in Nigeria, politicians, people in our country, still blaming, and perhaps it's for the citizens to blame what the British did or whatever they did. But to hear a president, to hear a governor, blaming, the Nigerian condition on what happened 60 years ago. And I'm thinking, so what Lord Lugard did, what does that have to do with the 20 billion naira that is now sitting in your account? I don't see how the two follow. And I feel, sometimes we use our history as an excuse. And because, I studied public policy as a master's, and we did a lot of development work. And there are other countries that got independence at the same time as us. And, they also had the seeds of destruction sown in, their setup. But, they managed to move forward. For me, I've stopped, in my writing anyway, I've stopped blaming what people did 50 years ago. I'm looking at our leaders now.
Yeah.
But what you say, though, actually, the way you've constructed your narrative, in fact, you actually go back to some kind of slavery in the sense that there's a woman who represents the exploitation, sexual exploitation of women who were taken to Italy as prostitutes. There's no way, in my view, in that particular work, there isn't that reference, that strong reference, in fact, to the colonial condition and its nightmare that continues to haunt us. There is no way. Actually, in your work, not in your articulations of your position.
I mean,
even yeah.
Well, women are trafficked to Italy. This is true. But women are also trafficked within Nigeria. I don't know. I feel that we also have a hand. We also have a hand in what we see.
Well, I think in my case, the situation of these past is a very fresh wound in respect that it's different from, I wanted to put the two and juxtapose the two of, the history of South Africa, where somebody like me comes from a country where everybody that grew up in a region where, when we were small, we had a way to say that we can count the white people in Liberia. We know all the white people. Yeah. We know where they are, we know where they live. And for many of them to fly below the radar, we can just sleep with them in Ponchera and then they just stay. So we know, and for me to come here down in a different part of Africa where, when I first came to this part, I would not lie to you, like my eyeball was stretched. I just saw people everywhere. And then in South Africa, the race issue is just everywhere. Like, I would just have people, like, some of the first conversations I had is like, I grew to the point of living in Cape Town where I would have fun, go somewhere, maybe tie my hair like I did now, and people would be like, oh, where you from? You sound different, and blah, 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 blah. And they would always get to the point, are you colored? I'll be like, what is...
Yeah, what is color?
It's like there's a growing discomfort in South Africa if people cannot racially profile you. You can actually make somebody uncomfortable. I lived for a long time in Tygerberg, in the Paro area, and it was like people had bets going on what type of colored, how colored was I?
Who did what to whom?
How fresh is her mukarad?
Yeah, exactly.
So for V to come and have this, a much fresher wound, because for her this war, civil war ended less than 10 years, and then to have the race issue of apartheid and something that's still ongoing in South Africa, to put those two histories together and to show that, sort of post-colonial Africa and an African country that was never colonized, but their history came to a head and affected this girl in a very real way in the 21st century. I think that's one of the parallels that I want to
Hawa, just on that point, just in brief, this is my last question before I allow you to read. Just give us a sense of the slave American history of Liberia, because just to give some members of the audience this distinction that you are making, because it also speaks to the cultural identity politics of Liberians within Africa.
Okay. Okay. Well, long story long, but we'll try and mash it down.
Please do.
Liberia was founded. Now we're using the quotes, because the local indigenous Liberian people do not like the idea where in the history books it is said that, Liberia founded by the American slaves. They came and they found people there. So anyway, small groups of slaves were freed in the States in the early 18th century. Around the 1820s, they were dumped in Africa. They said, oh, y'all go back to Africa. So people of mixed descent from all over Africa that have been collected through slavery, they've been mixed with many, Cherokee blood and white blood principally. They came back to this land that was cordoned off and called Liberia. They faced a lot there was a lot of conflict with the indigenous tribes, because they came obviously and they took the prime pieces of land, but they didn't know the landscape. They were faced with a lot of diseases, yada, yada, yada. So 1847 is annexed, is declared an independent state, first in Africa, never colonized. And then you have 1990, where these two groups of people finally have had enough of each other. Who makes you think you're better than us? Civil War, Charles Taylor.
I also love the
NC.
idea that your main character is a Johnson. Let's not get into that.
I mean, I think what's important to add is that, well, then oppression isn't racial. You've told the story of the British colonization of Nigeria or anywhere else, and I think, human beings, if anyone is coming from a position of strength, it's part of the human condition to oppress.
Somebody else, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Then I would like you to read, starting with Chibundu, and then you read, and then we open the floor. And
Okay. So, The Spider King's Daughter is told in 2 first-person narratives, and I'm going to read to you from Abike's portion of the story. Chapter 1. Let me tell you a story about a game called Frustration. A dog used to follow me around when I was 10. One day, my father had his driver run this dog over in plain view of the house. I watched from my window, the black car purring on the grit, the driver's hands shaking as he prepared himself for a second hit, and my father sitting in the back seat, watching. The car reversed. Again, his tires rolled over my dog, and then he sent for me. I was calm until I reached him, his head bowed in the black funeral suit that he wore throughout my childhood, his arms folded. I'm so sorry, he said. I know how much that dog meant to you. I don't know how this idiot didn't see it. I knew he was lying. He knew I knew. And in that moment, I felt an anger fill me so strong, it would surely have killed one of us if I let it loose. Somehow, it was clear to me that this would be the wrong thing to do. I strolled over to the dog and prodded it with my foot. Blood had streaked its fur, and it was whining in pain. My father studied my face, searching for the smallest hairline of a crack. I just stood there, looking at the animal. Finally, I said, Daddy, please, can we run over my dog again? Both he and the driver were visibly shocked. My father nodded. The driver shook his head, his knuckle bones popping out of his dark skin. Do as she says, my father said. Aim for the head, I said, leaning against the car and taking a perverse pleasure in the driver's shrinking away. I turned and walked towards the house in that stroll that children have on the first day of their summer holidays. I called over my shoulder, almost as an afterthought. Daddy, please make sure he hits the head this time. Abike 1, Mr. Johnson 0. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Hawa.
It's strange. So she also has a Johnson.
Yeah.
It's a West African thing.
You see?
These Liberian girls.
Well, anyway, the Johnsons are scattered. They're very popular. Ghana, Nigeria,
Fair
Liberia,
enough.
yes. There was one Johnson guy, I think he put his sperm in a crop duster and spread it. Anywho. Okay. Okay, so the Lazarus component of this book is like something that's supposed to be dead, but it resurges.
Fantastic.
So throughout the book, I played with the theme of something slowly coming to life.
Fantastic.
So we follow the progression of this dead body. I have a thing for dead bodies. I revealed today that I'm a medical scientist, but in my spare time, I like to do autopsies. I hunt for pathologists. I go to their office. I show them my book, It's Me, and ask them if they would let me do, routine autopsies with them. And sometimes there's, interesting cases. I take notes. They allow me to take pictures. And I keep a file, and it inspires me. So,
Wow.
what can you say?
We have children here. Yeah.
Yes, but I get very bored on dates. So I don't know
On dates?
Yes. I'm bored on a date, but a dead brain looking at the striations of the bleeding from a road traffic accident, very exciting.
It's a pity you can't date corpses, yeah.
Okay, so this point is when we've been following this dead body for a while. So now it started in one place, and it's winter in Cape Town. So it's rainy, everybody knows Cape Town, rainy, wintry. And it came from a storm drain, and the storm drain collapsed, and now it's now entered the general sewage. So this is where we now meet Miss Thang. Okay. The teenager's skull hit the metal grates with incredible force. The impact caused the focal points of several cracks in the bone to splay into a web of hairline fractures. As the sewer emptied out of the underground pipe, it left behind the dead weight, garbage, and the carcasses of pigeons and one unfortunate cat. On a cement level close to the ground, the Black River and the N2 highway, the battered frame finally came to rest. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the chatter of vermin. Once again, the surface of the remains began to dry. Skeletonization, the complete decomposition of soft tissue that leaves behind only bone material, is a sure and steady process dependent on temperature, moisture, and the action of microorganisms. If a dead body is left undisturbed, the traveling corpse in the drain pipe was up against much more than just structural damage. Its early phases of putrefaction, the disintegration process in which the body gradually falls apart on a molecular and then a physical level, had begun in a very dry and aerated setting 2 years before. Impeded by the constant blast of air directed past it for several months, the usual destruction caused by bacteria had been kept at bay. Instead, mummification had begun. Skin and muscle that should have fallen away had desiccated into a leathery parchment that hugged the bones. After being submerged for days, the remains were somewhat rehydrated now, and the hitchhiking microbes on its surface and in the water were rejuvenated enough to recommence their busy task. A rat wandered close for a nibble, flinched and pushed off, disgusted by the tough flesh and layer of dark slime covering the corpse. Some things even rats won't do.
Anybody with an autopsy for hire? Here's the custom. Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to allow members of the audience to engage with the authors. If you don't mind, because at least you know who they are, and a little bit of you know who I am. But it will be good as well to know who you guys are. So just say, my name is so-and-so. There's no so-and-so, of course, here. But in case he or she is here. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hey, Laurie.
Dumela.
Introduce yourself, please, for the benefit of the audience.
Okay, my name is Laurie Kubitile. I want to know if you think there's any difference between the books that are published by African writers in Europe and America compared to books published on the continent.
Good question. Fantastic. Maybe let's take 2 or 3 before we, yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Zuki. I just wanted to say this is actually directed to Chibundu. I read The Spider King's Daughter, and I think it came out when you were 21. And I just wanted to know, because I only read your biography after I'd finished reading the book. And I kind of didn't like you very much because I thought, well, you know, this is a bit of an overachieving little brat.
Yeah, exactly.
So
she is.
to write something so freaking brilliant
I can smell the breast
at her
milk
age.
from here. She was cleaned last week.
So I suppose my question is like, do you do anything for fun? Like really?
Fantastic. And then the last question from the gentleman here.
Hi, my name's Evan Frieden. I just want to say thanks that, you know, just the discussion and brief excerpts were very moving. What I wanted to ask you is, your themes are so universal. What do you think is perhaps distinctive about African writing? Because I'm having difficulty to even wondering if there is such a thing in terms of your themes.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Okay, well, Laurie's question. Yeah, I was going to say, you know, perhaps African writers abroad are more political, but I don't think that's true. I'm thinking about it now, looking for actual examples. I don't think that's true, you know. Writers write about what they're interested in. But I think for me, from the African writers who are writing from home that I've read, I feel there's more of a freedom with language. So with writing The Spider King's Daughter and being published in England, it's more difficult for me to put pidgin in my prose. So I can put pidgin in my dialogue, but to actually describe things with pidgin English, you know, that is not something my editor would, you know, red mark. And I read Egosa Imaswen's book, Fine Boys, and he writes with pidgin. He describes things. It was very new because I hadn't seen that before. He describes things in pidgin. Like he would describe this table and do it in pidgin and switch back to English. And you know, that's how we speak. And I found that so interesting. And I remember speaking to another Nigerian author who's published abroad and writing from home, but is published abroad. And she was saying that it's fantastic, but it limits his writing, that it'd be difficult for it to be published in England and it'd be difficult for it to be translated, etc., etc. And I thought, well, fair enough, but, you know, I'm glad that somebody did it. I'm glad that somebody did it.
No, I agree. We have, you know, we can play with language more. And I had the same thing where there's a whole section in the book where people like, oh, when I came to that part, I was like, yo, I just skipped because it's a conversation between a Liberian and her best friend who is Nigerian. So they talk to each other in their pidgin, but they understand each other. So when people read this section, they scratch their hair a little bit. So I think we can play, you know, we can play with language more. And I think the lives of Africans is more interesting. When I speak to, you know, I just came from the States not long ago and spoke. I met a lot of writers and aspiring writers and poets there. And they, having been born and bred in concrete jungles, they actively seek out moments, like they absorb everything on a, you know, another supra level of perception, whereas, and then they write it and they enhance and embellish it, to my estimation, beyond what that experience was. Because in writing, you need to be interesting. Whereas people like us, you know, I was just laughing today that who watches Survivor?
Yeah.
Survivor is living in Africa. We don't have time to watch Survivor. Survivor is a show that would enthrall an American audience. Here, from Monday to Sunday is Survivor. So I think we have a lot more to say naturally. So we have that. That's an advantage that we have, that if you decide to turn your hand to writing, you will have a wealth of stories to tell that people will rarely be engaged with.
Yeah, so fiction is all over, you know.
Yes, fiction is. And the fiction that we read in books, we read it and go, but this was my Thursday. You know, whereas somebody actually had, you know, they thought it up and they might even market it as sci-fi. Whereas for us, science is now. So,
you guys are so decadent. I love you. Let's go ahead. Another round.
we did it.
Yeah, we have it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Zuki. Sorry.
She's boring, Zuki.
Go ahead, my sister. Go ahead.
I mean, what do I do for fun? I don't know. I enjoy myself very much. What do you mean how? Okay, what's the meaning of, stop talking back from the audience. Get your own microphone.
Yeah.
Like, I enjoy smaller things that other people would say are, you know, enjoying. So I suppose just sitting down with my friends, that's enjoyment for me. I don't know. I think because I do. I'll tell you one of my favorite moments in South Africa. I'll tell you a story of what I think is fun and what I really enjoy. So I was driving to a reading, or I was being driven to a reading, and the car broke down, and smoke started streaming from the bonnet. And it was quite terrifying because you could smell, you know, something burning. So I was scared. I was like, hey, I'm going to die in South Africa. And then, you know, the car stopped, and the lady who was driving, she was white, and she got down from the car, and she ran to the garage. But before she did that, she locked me in the car because she was like, hey, she locked me in the car, and she told me, you know, wind up the windows, etc., etc. And so I was like, well, okay, we're on the main road. It's just maybe that's a safety precaution. So she got people from the garage, the car reversed back, and then we were in a side road, so I thought, hey, okay, it's time for me to relax, leave the door open, recline my chair, because she had to leave me again because the person was coming to pick me up, didn't know where we were, so she went to stand on the main road. And again, on the side road, she told me, okay, we need to lock the door, we need to wind up the windows, that, is this is South Africa, etc., crime rates. And it was 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and there was traffic, and there were so many people around, and I couldn't see anything threatening. I was like, this is South Africa, this is South Africa. And so, eventually, I got picked up, and I got driven to my region, and I just thought, oh, that was strange. And so I told this story to one of my readers who was black at the reading. And when I finished telling him the story, he just, wrinkled his face. Yeah. And he was like, that's such a white attitude to cry. And I don't know, for me, I gain enjoyment from interacting with people. Like, it just made my day. I've been telling this story to everybody. Like, it's just, I like talking to people, I like walking around in Lagos if I see somebody, my guy, how far? That's what I derive, from.
In fact, I almost mistook you for a Zulu maiden earlier on. Thank you very much. Let's have another round of questions.
Wait, there was one more,
There's
which
one
I
more.
thought was a very,
Okay.
very good. Sorry, we're taking so long to answer your question. Okay. I think your point is very valid, that what is it that is so specific about African writing? African writing, the term, is the marketing strategy. And it depends on what you want to do. You can sign up to it. I mean, Granta every year, they have a book like Best Brazilian Writers, Best Middle Eastern Writers, and then, sometimes they have Best African Writers. But, I mean, you take it... and you read that, and these are universal themes. These are marketing. This is 21st century. Everything is advertising, man. Yeah.
Does it answer your question? Partly, eh? So you didn't do a good job. Try again.
Hawa?
Okay.
I can't say it. I think it feeds back into what I'm saying about the whole labeling and, not to be monotonous. But
Fair enough.
She's right that it is marketing. They need to have somewhere on the shelf to put us. And I can understand, in as much as that needs to be done, when people walk in, they need to know where to go if they're looking for a genre. But if they would just give me more shelf space, I would not complain.
Yeah, I mean,
so, yes, give us more space on the shelf. And then you can call me African writing as much as you like.
I suppose.
Give me a big shelf where all my kindred spirits, we can put every volume of each of our books, 2-3 copies, instead of giving us the little rinky-dinky thing. And all of us got to squeeze there.
I mean,
after we...
Sorry, I want to add to that, because, we shouldn't have African writing in Africa.
Why? Yeah, why am I going to a bookstore?
So you're suggesting that our handlers made a mistake to suggest this?
No, we're glad that we did it.
Yeah, we're glad for the holiday.
It's putting the issues out there as they are.
Okay.
That,
So our handlers are right.
I think they're right to maybe
that's fine.
address it. It's something we need to address.
In fact, there's also a wonderful article by Binyavanga Wainaina, How to Write About Africa, which appeared a few years ago. It's beautiful, it's fun, but it talks to the issues in a, another set of 3 questions, please.
There's one man.
Men in red, at least. Or pink, I don't know.
It's salmon, huh?
Oh, it's salmon.
No, it's fuchsia.
It's coral. It's coral. I don't know exactly how to...
Your name, please?
My name is Salim Washington. And I'm a little confused, and so my question may be confused as well. But what I'm wondering about is, do you have an ideal reader, or is that an irrelevant type of concern for you? You're saying that I can understand the logic of not wanting to have the separation for market reasons and so forth. But it's interesting, when I'm in New York trying to buy novels by black authors, and particularly black women authors, books that I'm particularly interested in, it's hard to find because they refuse to market it that way. Whereas it's easier to find in a place that has a category of black writers or African writers or what have you. So And I guess that's at odds with what you're saying, and I can see both sides. But it makes me wonder, do you have an ideal reader? I was trying to understand your excerpts. They seemed macabre.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Point taken, my brother. Let's go ahead. Another question. Is somebody shy here? Oh. Uh-huh.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for this opportunity, and it's just been so lovely to listen to you all.
There's a
My
name
name is
somewhere
Zama.
there, missing.
My name is Zama. I'm a student here, and you know, you say that, you know, we shouldn't be set aside as African writers or for those that are young and are writing, but actually, if you look at how many young writers we do have in Africa, there's not enough. So on that, there's not enough, or maybe it's not public enough, but I read quite a bit, and I find that the genres that interest me are not African. I feel that sometimes when I read African stories, we try too hard to express the pain that people go through that is unspoken. So when you write your books, and I appreciate them, sorry I haven't read your books yet, what is your intention to the reader? Like, what am I supposed to take from it?
Okay. Good. Good. The last question, please. Okay, then go to town without the third question. Oh, I'm sorry, my brother.
Yes, someone, thank you very much. This is Douglas is the name. I'm coming from Pretoria. I've been sitting here for days now. And
You make it sound like we kept you here. Sitting here for days.
And I've been listening to speakers saying that you cannot be completely objective when you write these stories. And I just want more feeding from the speakers in terms of this, because I get an element of detachment in the way these are being written. And this, my concern, of course, links up with the speaker just before me.
Detachment from?
The speaker before me. I mean, the question before
No, I was
me.
asking if detachment from, if you could explain a bit, my brother.
Yeah, explain it. These questions are a little bit fuzzy.
Listen, there's just an example here. The lady sitting in front here tells this story of she being left in the car in South Africa. And then she goes, asks someone else who tries to give her an answer, because she's not giving the answer herself. This is rather confusing, because the other speaker was trying to say this is a subjective matter. The other one shows some detachment in terms of, factually, yes, if you left in the car, what is there to bother about? And someone is saying this is South Africa. These are two inputs which seem to conflict.
Okay.
Logically.
You are writers, you understand the question better than me.
Hey, no. Please. I'm only 23. I was still taking my mother's milk last week. I don't understand the question. I don't understand.
I think she was just, because she was just trying to illustrate rather colorfully that she draws a lot of inspiration from human stories.
Sure.
And then she just told that story as an anecdote, to illustrate that speaking to people is where you can draw a lot of inspiration. I don't think it was a sense of detachment from, expecting to be outside of the story and expecting somebody else to answer. Yeah, I don't understand the question.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go back to the two questions.
Yes. Okay. The gentleman who said do we have an ideal reader, or do we write necessarily with an ideal reader in mind? You from the States? I am. Okay. Hi. My former colonial friends. Yes, I had a lot of fun in New York, and one of the funny things about silly story in New York is, besides that, people actually rarely do think, like if they come to visit me in Africa, they will land in a bush and have to like slash and go, to get to my house, and then, maybe for a ride from the airport on the elephant to my hut. People rarely do think that. And then when people, they found out what I did, they found out that I was a writer, and, New York is a scene with a lot of artists. And people were astounded that they were like, how did you get published? And the undercurrent was that I'm from a country where English is spoken. You African, I've seen the images of Africa. How do you get published? And I'm in New York, and I can't get anybody to look at my work. A lot of people said this in very, indirect and sometimes direct ways. Because I went to a lot of parties, people get drunk, and they would tell you things to your face. But anyway, anyway, I was like, yeah, I'm blessed. So, and I also speak English impeccably. There's that. But when you say, like, you write with an ideal reader in mind, I think a lot of us write unwittingly to, I don't want to give you a lofty sort of feeling to it, but we write to educate people, and not to educate people in a finger-wagging kind of way, but to show you that this is my home, this is somewhere I'm proud of, this is what we're going through. So if a book of mine or of any of these, brilliant writers gets onto a shelf in New York, we would hope that, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, I would happily, want to be on a shelf where it said African writing or African women writing, because I would want somebody in New York to know that, in Africa, these are African authors. So if I'm looking for, something to maybe counter the Black American experience, I would like to read something from Africa and see what that, so I wouldn't mind that, but not to walk into exclusive books here and see myself on the African writing. But I don't think that I ever sat down and thought about constructing a story for a readership. For me, it goes in the other direction, that I write, the great man said it, I write what I like, I will write what I like. And then the people who find what I have to say appealing, those people are what will be my readership. Because in life, you want to be liked by the people who you matter to, not to people who are just rubbish.
So how it is true that African writers are also imaginative. So it is true.
Yes, it is true.
Okay.
As strange as...
Okay, the last question.
We didn't answer. Yeah, Chibundu.
Okay, and then
we will answer her question.
Just be brief. We're about to be chucked out of this room.
Yeah, very quickly. On the question of who I write for, I write for the millions of individuals who read Harry Potter, and whatever unites all of them, they should united and by the King's daughter. And then also to your question.
She said that you feel maybe that there's a disjoint between the stories that necessarily excite you. You don't find that they are mirrored in African writing, something like that?
Then maybe I think you should write your own. That sounds like a writing perspective.
And
so we're
I find, for me personally, what drives me into crime is that I'm not a fan of poetry. People always say, how can you, in school I was forced to read poetry. I did it. I got an A. It was a cakewalk for me. But yeah, I'm clever. What can you say? It's not my fault.
Wonderful, wonderful.
But I was just, trying to say that, to read these stories, you have to, we have genres. And for me, crime is underrepresented. So it's something that I got into, knowing full well that African crime is now to people a curiosity. And for that reason, people will want to pick it up.
Yeah, I had to play footsie here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for indulging us. The next session is coming very soon, so we have to have a short break. Thank you very much. So I'll release you all. Thanks to our authors. Give them a round.